Hi everyone, and happy Monday. I was going to take a break from doing a video tonight. However, this topic caught my attention recently, and even though I've done some videos kind of alluding to it, I guess I haven't done one being very clear about the pastel pencils I use. So, and I know there's been some confusion out there. I've seen some people that have bought pastel pencils thinking they're like pastel colored pencils, getting them, realizing they're different, and then being unsure how to use them. So I thought I'd talk today about what the differences are, what a pastel pencil really is, the different brands out there, and then finally showing you guys how I use them in my coloring books. So let's go ahead and get started. So I wish there was a different way to designate from them, but you hear people say pastel pencils, and it can get very confusing as to what they mean. So a pastel colored pencil, like Brett Ferner, Holbein, Castle Art has pastel colored pencil set, and Arteza and Pastelo. All of those brands are pastel colored pencils, and what they mean is they are regular wax or oil combination colored pencils that when you color on a surface, let me zoom in. When you color on a surface, they shade like any other type of colored pencil. You can build color. These are generally the tones, the colors of the pencils are pastel shades. So these are pastel shades of colored pencils. So you get like your light yellows and your baby pinks, your baby blues, all those different types of colors. And when you sit there and rub them, they don't do anything, of course, but you can apply blending solution and a blender just like you would any other typical wax or oil based colored pencil. So that's what those pastel colored, when you think of those, think of them as pastel colored pencils is basically what they are. They're just colored pencils in pastel shades. Now there are other pastel pencils on the market that look like this. There is a brand, Derwent is probably the most well-known. Derwent, the Faber-Castell Pitt pastel pencils are in this category, and the Stabilo pastel pencils are in this category. And basically what these are these types of pastels, like these chalk pastels that we all have in pencil form. So they've taken the pastel supply, the makeup of this, and they've put it in pencil form and surrounded it with wood and made a pencil with it. So with these, you can shade. You're going to get more of a grainy, less smooth result. You're going to get a few more crumbs because, again, these are soft pastels in pencil form. And these, you can take your finger, you can take a blending tool, whatever suits you, and blend these out. So I can even take my finger. And they'll still have a little bit of the pencil left behind. So a lot of artists use these for particularly like precision marks on paintings of, let's say, like birds and animals, cats and dogs, to get the nuances of the different fur colors and textures. They will use very sharp versions of these pastel pencils, and they will just stroke with them, which gives you a great line, but as long as you're not like rubbing over it, you're not going to get this kind of blend or anything. So so that is the key difference between the two. These are just shades of color, pastel as in the pastel shades of color, and these are soft pastels in pencil form. So when you do your research and you're looking at a product, be sure you understand what the difference is. I already kind of listed them, but of course new products come out all the time. I would say the majority of them are probably going to be the pastel shades, as I'm not seeing as many pastel pencil brands with the soft pastel in. Like I said, I've seen Derwent, I've seen Faber-Castell's Pitt Pastel set is also soft pastels in pencil form, and the Stabilo set. So there's that. One thing also to keep in mind with any sort of pastels is depending on the makeup of them, because they're particularly dusty, they can have some elements in them that could be considered dangerous, I guess. And it's in colored pencils, it's not as big of a deal because you're not getting much dust. But of course with pastel, any sort of pastels, soft pastels, or the pastel pencils, you're going to be creating quite a bit of dust. You might be touching it, you might be inhaling it. And so certain products have a, well, it's here on the front. It's called like an AP certification. You can see it right here on this soft pastel set. That shows that they use like entirely safe products in the makeup of this. And so this is an optional thing. Some people, it doesn't matter to them. But I bring it up because with the cats and with myself and how much I've been using the pastel pencils, I do create a little bit of dust. And because I'm working in an office environment and not like outside where it's well ventilated, I personally wonder not as much about myself, what I'm inhaling, but what the cats might be inhaling. So this is important to me. Both the Pitt Pastel pencils and the Derwent carry this AP certified label. The Stabilos do not, and that's the only reason I don't have them. One of these days I might get them because I've heard great reviews about them, but just FYI. So, alright, let me get my two sets of very different looking swatches here. Alright, so a couple things that I picked up when I started using pastels. I have different types of blending products, but what I found works best for me when I'm using pastel pencils and coloring, these types of pastel pencils. These go over here. Is you know, you want some sort of blending tool for when you lay them down. The best tool for me and the way that I use these is just a simple Q-tip, cotton swab, because it gives me a little bit of precision with a fairly, you know, blunted pointed tip here. And because I do sometimes use it in small areas, this allows me to get in there as long as I if I use it for a period of time, it really dulls the end, but if I constantly switch them out, I can get pretty precise in the edges where I'm blending. Now, you try whatever works for you. Something like a cotton swab might work better for you, a blending sponge, one of the makeup brushes, if you're using them on backgrounds and stuff. And sometimes I do switch up. If I'm using them on a background or something, sometimes I will use the makeup brush if there's a lot of it. So it just really depends on what I'm in the mood for, but for the most part I use my Q-tips with them. You also want to pick up, if you haven't already, a really good brush, and this one needs to be washed because you can tell how much I've used it. Really big makeup type brush to sweep, because these are dusty pencils. They're dusty by nature because they're soft pastels, and when you use regular soft pastels you also get a lot of dust. So it's not as much dust in the pencil form as it is on a regular block soft pastel, but it's still there because of course you need that softness to be able to blend it out. So I keep one of these around to frequently, once I get done blending, sweep the pastel off the paper. And I also picked up the specific Derwent pastel sharpener. I noticed that my regular pencil sharpener chewed these up pretty bad. So I use this one just specifically for the pastel pencils, which seems to work well. And the other thing I would recommend is something to put on the paper where you're putting your hand. So as you're working on the paper, you're going to be picking up a lot of the pastel. If you're working in different areas of the picture and you're laying your hand on the picture, you're going to be picking up the pastel in your hand. So what I would recommend is some sort of glove like this, like an art glove, or a piece of paper or something to keep your hand from picking up the pastel off the paper, because obviously if it's rubbing off the paper onto your hand, then you're losing all the shading you've been working towards. So I have two sets of the pastel pencils. The first one I have, and the one I use the most, is the Derwent pastel set. Let me back this out a little. This is really bright, sorry. This is a set of 72, I believe, and I will say with these, packaging is very important, because these are softer pencils at the core. They tend to break and shatter easily, so I ordered these from Amazon and I feel like they weren't packaged well, and thus I've had a number of pencils. You can see I'm not using them that much, but I'm burning through them quickly, so I've already had to order some backups. There were also a few pencils in here that were kind of scratchy. I think the Prussian Blue, Tomato, and Raspberry might have been them. I ordered some different pencils just to see if they would blend better, and they do a little, but I think it might just be the simple chemical makeup of those particular colors. They don't blend as well as some of the other colors, so do keep that in mind. There are a few. Those three in particular were the ones I could think of. And so I made my swatches like this. This gives you kind of a quick look. So you can see where the raspberry is kind of scratchy there, the tomato as well. The Prussian Blue. I tend to use the darker pencils more than anything in the way I color, because I'm using them for shading. So a lot of the light colored pencils, at least as of right now, aren't getting a whole lot of use. Whoops, there went a sharpener. Let's bring that back. Sorry about the mic. And then I have the Derwent Faber-Castell Pitt pastel pencils. These come in a 60 set, so you are not getting as many colors as you do with Derwent, which is one of the reasons I tend to go to the Derwents. And where do these start? Like I said, very different looking swatches, but really and truly I kind of use both depending on what colors I need. There are some similarities in the colors, but particularly in the greens there are some significant differences. So I do pull between the two sets. And like I said, there is a third set out there called the Stabilo set. I believe that is also a 60 set, and I just do not have those because, as far as I know, they don't have the AP certification. And just, if it were just me, I wouldn't care, but with the pets also being constantly around my desk and everything, I would prefer that the certification be on there. Alright, so that gives us a basic rundown of pastel pencils, what they are, what kind of sets are out there. Now you're thinking, as a colorist, and I've told you how a lot of artists use them, you're probably thinking, okay, so I bought these, now I'm not sure what I want to do with them. I want to color with them, but I don't know how to use them, or, you know, so and so. So I'm going to show you guys how I use them. In this page, I've already colored from Crazy Cat Girls by Deborah Muller. This is a buddy color I'm working on with my friend Tammy from Tammy Colors 2. So the first thing I do is make sure I start out with lighter colors so that I can use my darker pastel pencils to create some shading. So that's why we have brighter colors here, kind of a brighter wood color, kind of the same approach you would do a grayscale. Like the light green in the background, the light purple here. Even on my black cat, I used a C7 marker just to make it more of a dark gray, so when I add black to it, you can see it at least a little bit, the difference. And I would say you could even go lighter on the shading if you really want a massive difference between the two colors. And I just realized I left a piece not colored, which is fine. I'll just, what will I do? What color will I use? We'll just say it's a red floor. Why not? So I will put an alcohol marker base down. One thing I would also invest in if you're using these is a good set of erasers. I have two in particular I use a lot. If I can find the other one. There you are. For small spaces where it might smear in areas I don't want it to be, I use my little Tombow Mono Zero eraser, which is looking a little rough on the edge here. And then for big areas, if for some reason I want to get rid of a lot of pastel, I just use one of these old school clicky erasers. So and that's one of the beauties of using pastel pencils, is if you shade with them and you don't like them, usually it's a lot easier to erase them off the paper than it would be, just like your little block chalk pastels. It's easier to erase them off the paper than regular colored pencil, which might leave some color behind. Okay, so we're going to start with the background, and I'm going to go ahead and put the glove back on if I can find it. I am extremely unorganized. What the heck? I just had that in my hand. There it is. Okay. Go ahead and put the glove on. So I do it after the alcohol marker layer, but before I add in any sort of gel pen or bright shiny things, because a lot of times your pastel pencil may dull any sort of gel pen work or anything you've done prior to that. Alright, so let me go to my greens. I'm thinking either a shamrock or an emerald green. The emerald might not be dark enough. So this is what I typically do. I go in here, I'll grab a couple pencils that I want to try. Shamrock, oops, sorry, and I hit that again. Emerald green. And I am just going to scritch a little bit in just to see how I like them. So the emerald green gives me the brighter color I want, but it's not as easy to see as the darker green. Okay, we're gonna go with the shamrock, I think. And so all I gotta do is go back in here, just erase what I did. I do this a lot of times when I'm just not sure about which one I want to use. So let me sharpen this with my pastel sharpener. Now you may not get a super duper sharp point on it, but that's close enough for what I'm doing here. So this is basically what I do. I like to create kind of a shaded outline of the color block that I'm working in. So instead of worrying about, because I'm lazy, instead of worrying about light sources and certain places being darker and stuff like that, I just shade around the outline. So because this is a bigger space, I'm going to use a little more than I typically do. But all I'm going to do is take my pencil and just rub it right around the edges here. You can see some dust is being created, but that's okay. You need that dust in order to be able to blend it out. Now in this case, I could have used a makeup brush, but I think I'm going to go ahead and just use my Q-tip, because these are smaller spaces when you block them up like this. Had there not been such a big headboard here, then, and I had more background, I probably would have used a brush. Okay, so then I just take my Q-tip and I just gently rub over the pastel pencil. If it doesn't entirely dissolve the line, I don't worry too much about it. It's usually not super noticeable. I do try to make sure I get right up to the edge though. Even if it moves a little bit into the space I don't want it in, I can always come in and erase that out. And part of the page was missing, so, or part of the page was off the camera. And that gives me a very, very light, subtle shading. Now, the beauty of this is A, it's quick. You see how quickly I was able to do that section. B, if I don't feel like there was enough, I can easily come in and add more. If I feel like I added too much, I can easily come erase it. It's very forgiving compared to putting down a colored pencil like heavily and then trying to erase it. It is very yeah, very forgiving. When it comes to being erased. So I added a little bit more just so I can make sure I get good. And over here, I'm going to pull out just a little bit away from it. It is also not a super in your face kind of shading. Like, I don't necessarily mind that. Now I'm going to come in just to be double safe because I can't remember where exactly. And so it got a little bit onto the wood, but that's fine because I can just come and erase it out. And I use my brush, and voila, we have a section of it done. Now, like I said, this is extremely subtle compared to what you could do with colored pencils. And I realize that. But for how quickly I can create some subtle shading in this, versus using a colored pencil, and how quickly I can get this put down compared to shading with 1 or 2 colored pencils in the background. I love this effect, and it gives me a little something extra without having to spend hours adding colored pencil. You can see this one's getting into the sign a little bit, but no worries there. Now, do you have to outline everything like I'm doing? No. You could, you know, maybe you are better at the whole light sources thing, and maybe you just shade in the areas that need shadow. And I say that's awesome, and maybe one day I will get a lot better with that. But like you can see here, from this side to this side, it just adds a little something. Like I said, and you see how quick this is. I would spend probably a good 30 minutes to at least 30 minutes on trying to use colored pencil on this background, just trying to get it right. And if I didn't have the right color, and I of course use too much pressure on the pencils, you know, not like I ever do that, it's going to be hard to completely erase it out. And like I said, this is where the pencil, where your glove or your piece of paper comes into play. If you're shading the different areas like this, instead of working your way from top left to bottom right, then you're going to have areas that you're going to be touching with your hand. I try to limit it, but the glove helps immensely. So, and I don't worry too much about, like, when I'm using multiple colors, I try to keep up with my Q-tips, obviously, so I'm not using the wrong one. Ooh, sorry. My voice did something crazy there. So I'm not using the wrong one for the wrong color. But today I'm just grabbing a fresh one. Like I said, you could rub out as far from there as you like. I usually will go out a little ways, and that'll be that. So there. Got a little bit on the background there. Now, let's do the same for the headboard. I used sand, the sand Copic marker. So, obviously I want to look at the browns. Thinking, let's try brown earth and Venetian red. Now, I wish there were more. The one biggest downside I have with the pastel pencils is I wish I had more color choices. I keep hitting my mic, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know what my problem is today. But I wish I had more color choices. Because with the 60 or the 70, and then, okay, so the Venetian red you really can't see. So the brown earth might be the way to go. I could do the brown earth on the edges and then do the Venetian red as a little bit of extra for the wood grain. We might do that. So, but I wish I had more colors because, again, unless you start off, and this is something I haven't tried yet, is just using the lightest marker shades I can so that I can use some of the lighter pastel pencils. I haven't really tried that yet. But because of the types of colors I use, I'm a little limited in, is that the brown earth? Yeah. And which pencils I can use to actually see a difference. And if I pick a dark enough color, sometimes I just have to use the carbon black to shade because there's no other pencil that's dark enough. So, all right. That is one of my problems with the pastel pencils. My other problem is really tight spaces. I would say on really small spaces you would probably be better served using colored pencils because it's really hard to get precision even with the Q-tip in small spaces for me. Most of the time I will end up blending and then having to go in with my eraser to erase like half of it just to get what I was looking for. Alright, so that was the brown earth. Like these little spaces up here. I'm just barely touching them. Alright, so let me, with the Venetian red, instead of going over it, see I'm always like trying some different stuff too. Instead of going over it, let me just go over the wood grain with it. And see what kind of effect we get. Oh, I like that. See, those are such small little areas. If I blend, it's just going to blend the whole thing, right? So I'm better served just going over those lines. It takes a little bit of the black and makes it more of a brownish color, which makes it look, you know, more like wood grain. So that is a great effect. Now, I would definitely say with these, you will want to spray a fixative on your paper when you're done. I actually have a stack of books that I'm waiting to spray because I need to go outside to the porch to do it, and I don't like to spray the fixative when the cats are out there. And so the cats are out there all the time right now. So one day, I'm going to take all my pastel and pencil pictures. I'm going to run them all in. And I'm going to go outside and take about half an hour to an hour and get everything sprayed and dried. I use this method on a lot of pictures now. I should have waited. I get in the habit of seeing the crumbs and to go ahead and brush them out without realizing I need to leave them there. I use these on my Matchstick Mouse and Grogu, all my Morgan O'Brien books, Joshua Dunbar pictures, Alexander Franzese. Anything that tends to not be as complex of a picture, that has like really big spaces that I want to add some sort of shading to, but I don't want to spend hours adding colored pencil, this is a great option. And I've even used it in complex pictures. The 80s picture I did a few months ago, if you go back and watch that video, I end up doing marker with pastel over it. And it was a bit of a challenge just because there were so many small spaces to go over. But I mean, I love how that picture turned out. I had spent so much time doing the marker part of it because it was a labor of love, just because I enjoyed it so much, that by the time I got to adding something to the markers, I just wanted to add pastels instead of colored pencils. But yeah, pictures like this that aren't super complex, that don't have a lot of small spaces and have a lot of big areas like this headboard and the wall, are really good choices in my opinion. Now I'm just going over all the wood grain. One of these days I would be very interested if I can, even with that sharpener I struggle with getting super sharp points on these. If I could get a sharp point where I could really do some fine detailed lines, I would love to try to use these to create fur on animals. I think that would, wait, I think it's the other one I put up on the other side. I think these would be great, kind of like the way I was telling you guys that a lot of pastel artists use. They'll use pan pastels to create kind of the blobby background look of the animal, and it's just amazing to me how, if you go watch a pastel artist sometime on YouTube, and they'll have a picture with pan pastels where they'll have blobs of color, and then next thing you know, they're coming in with the pencils and they create like this big fluffy dog or cat. And it just always amazes me how well they can see that, how it comes out like that. Alright, so I actually colored all of these with with my cats in mind. So I have 6, but since there were only 5, this one counts for Bagheera and Reef Sheep because they're both black cats. But we have Scamper, Sidonia, Leroy, and Winry. And then Maggie's over here in the picture on the wall because it's been about a year since he passed away. And while I miss all my cats, he's been, you know, the most recent one to pass away. And of course, the hardest one on me at this point. So, alright, so we're going to look at Scamper and some shading. Let's try French Gray Dark. Is this French Gray Dark? No. French Gray Dark, and I gave her some light orange. Now, she's not striped like this, but I just basically went with their colors in terms of accuracy. So while they may not be striped or look the same, they are colored as close as I could get them. So So what I'll probably do is show you guys Scamper real quick, because we're already hitting on 40 minutes here. And then I might work on the rest of the picture offline and show you the other biggest section will be obviously the bedspread, and let me just make sure. Sometimes it's hard for me to see where it might have rubbed over a little bit onto the cat. That way I know for sure she's ready to go. Alright. So with her, I might not color every outline. Like when it's real thin like this, thin areas, small areas, I may only use the pastel on one side, just to because like I said, it's going to cover a lot of area, and I'm probably going to have to come in with my eraser here so I can leave some areas. This is also where sometimes just brushing it in and leaving it like we did with the headboard might also be useful. Okay. Speaking of Scamper, hi Scamper. She must have heard her name. Now she's over my pile of stuff here, wondering where's the plastic and how she can get into it. Just very light touch on this, just enough to blend it just a touch. So there's not really a lot of obvious line marks is my biggest goal. There, see? Just took a little bit. I feel like she could even use some more right here. Yep. And if I want to clean up these little areas, I can use the mono eraser. And get in here. She's criticizing my work. She's like, Mommy, I don't have that much orange on me. Scamper, honey, it's called artistic license. It's called artistic license, ma'am. So I've got a tangerine here. Now, like I said, with some of these, you may not... Like, so, there's a lot of times I will shade with the pencils and it's hard for the camera to pick it up. But I can see it and I like it. So, like I said, it's the subtleness of it that I think I like so much. It just doesn't feel like it's as much work. So let me race around her nose a little. And see? I mean, that's all it took was just a literal couple strokes with the pencils, and you've got at least just a little bit of shading on the kitty. So yeah, so we've pretty much, with the exception of the sign up here, I guess we could do... I thought I used the lighter yellow. I guess I did. Alright, so let me get the bright yellow, which I had to order another one of since it is the darkest colors that have been... Well, they were broke, like I said, with the pastel pencils, I would almost say if you can, order them through Blick. I know sometimes the cost is just too different and it's cheaper to get them through Amazon. However, probably for the amount I saved in the initial purchase, for the amount of pencils I've had to buy to replace, I would have been better off. See, you can't hardly see that one, but that's okay. I would have been better off just paying the extra money with Blick. Alright, so let's see. That pink is an interesting color because I don't really have any other colors that would work well for that. We have a lavender, we have a magenta. So let's take a quick looky. The magenta is pretty much the same color. The lavender is not the same color. However, it might give us a pretty little kind of difference between the two. Let's go with the lavender. Why not? Because we'll either be using the lavender or something slightly darker for the bedspread. I am going to just do the one side since this is a pretty small area. Yeah, sometimes you can get some interesting effects with the color you use over the top. Like this gives it kind of a neon-y weird look, I guess. But like all her stuff is so brightly colored, I don't mind that. Alright. And then I'm just barely trying to touch it. Just dabbing, pretty much. There we go. See? It's not super bright, not super obvious, but I like it. And then I will do the same to the yellow. I guess I could have sworn I used the lightest yellow I had in my Copics, which is canary yellow. Maybe I should have used a pale yellow. This one you guys can't really see all that much, but that's fine. I used this combo on this light yellow and the dark yellow. There was a cat picture where he's staring at the moon in Joshua Dunbar's Easy Fall coloring book, and I did the moon in the majority of like the canary yellow color, and then I come in with this cadmium yellow to create some shading, and that actually turned out quite nice. Quite nice. Alright, so you've seen me do big spaces, you've seen me do small spaces. Let me go ahead and finish the rest of this off camera, and I'll show you guys the finished picture, and hopefully this will be helpful to you guys. Now, one thing I am going to do when I'm done, just so you aren't surprised, is after I get done with my pastel is when I add my gel pen. I go ahead and brush it off thoroughly. Then I come in with my glitter gel pens. I'll be adding some, of course, the leaves back here. These will all be probably gel pen, all these flowers, and I might do a little bit outline around some of the cats. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, oh, one additional place I could shade real quick and show you guys. So like red, there's a maroon and there's like a burgundy, but when you put in just a typical cadmium red color, those don't really show too much when you use those for the reds. So what I typically do is just use the carbon black for when I'm going to shade a cadmium red or like an ultramarine blue. Now these I am going to just shade the one side because I'm going to use a white gel pen on the other side to create hopefully a highlight, because these are supposed to be kind of shiny. There we go. And then I'll come in with a white gel pen and add that at the top. So let me go ahead and finish the rest of this off camera, and then we will show you guys the final picture. All right, here is my finished picture. So again, I just used the Derwent pastels for this one. If you guys want to see the Pitt pastels, I'm happy to show those in another video, but I mean, they essentially work the same. So it just really depends on what you guys want to see. Now, one thing you're seeing me do right now is I realize there's a lot of dust here on the outer edge. So I'm just going ahead and brushing that off. There we go. All right, so I thought it turned out really cute. Like I said, you get a little bit of subtle shading with the pastel pencils. It darkened up the purple so that it's not such a bright color on top of a bright wall color. It does darken it up a little bit. The gel pens I used to add a little bit of sparkle to the flowers also darkened it up a little bit, which I think ties in nicely to the page. And yeah, so added a little bit of sparkly blue to her hair. She is of course me, and I have little pieces of blue in my hair, so I thought it would be fun to do that with her as well. Added a little bit of shading to all the cats except for Winry's likeness. I just I had so many different browns mingled in there. I thought she stood well on her own. So you don't have to color every single thing. You don't have to shade every single thing with the pastel. I used a tan pastel. I'm just cleaning up a little bit of the white on the edge here while we're talking. I used a tan on her skin tone to try to get a little bit of shading, but it's not showing up too much, and I'm okay with that because I'm pale as a ghost, and so there's probably not really any shading anyway. This though would be helpful if there was a bigger variety of the pencils to choose from. I could probably find a color that would work, but you know, you're just limited to the pastel pencils you do have. So overall, I think it turned out really cute. The difference between just using marker and using pastel, I should put, if I can get a screen capture from the video, I will put them side by side here, because of course I forgot to take a just picture before I started using them. If I can do that, I will show them side by side here. And so yeah, this is pretty much how I color a lot of my pages these days. It's just so much quicker to add the pastel shading than pencil, and it's, like I said, it's quick, it's very forgiving if I don't like it or I get too far into another area. or whatever, I can just erase it and try a different color or whatever I want to use. And yeah, so hopefully this helps answer some questions about pastel pencils, what they are exactly, how they compare to pastel colored pencils, and if you do end up getting them, kind of wondering what can I do with these in terms of coloring. Hopefully this will help give you some ideas. And I don't normally, I guess, do technique videos, but I've used these long enough now that I actually feel pretty comfortable talking about them like this. So if you have any other uses that you've come across with using them, that with the pastel pencils, let me know in the comments. And yes, so tomorrow I will be back with some new release and probably just some new to me books flip through. There's probably going to be about 4 or 5. Wednesday, I'm hoping we can start watercoloring the Four Seasons Precious Cat. I don't know why I call it Four Seasons. The Precious Cat pirate picture for Watercolor Wednesday, because I'm hoping on Sunday then I can start putting pencils to it, because I did have somebody request me do that step by step, and that's going to be a long series. We may only get one side of it this month, but I'm gonna try. So y'all be prepared for that. This is gonna be it may be a little, I'll have to come up with a lot to talk about if I'm doing that in real time, but I don't mind trying. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this kind of surprise video. And then, like I said, I'll be back Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday I'll take a break, and then Friday we'll do the coloring book collection, part 6, I believe. So alright guys, thanks for watching, and bye for now.